Let's go. Lizzy, welcome to When the Cleats Come Off. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. You've been asking me for years now since our coaching days, and I'm finally here. I'm delivering.
You are delivering and more. Like you said, Bluey's on in the other room. We don't know how long we have, but I have a jam-packed conversation planned. We're going to talk hitting. We're going to talk just, do you know, game IQ? I feel like you're one of those people that I learned a lot about game IQ from. And I know we only coached together for, can't even call it a year because that was the COVID year, but, for a short time. But you know the game so well because you were in it for so long. And I
Yeah.
just feel like you're the perfect guest to kind of
All
talk about
right.
these things. But before we dive into it too much, where did your involvement of the game start? Because a lot of people, coaches, they all have this cool story. And I want to just know, like, what was little Lizzy like? Like,
Yeah.
what made her love softball?
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California. So the first 5 years of my life, my family moved around a little bit. Was born in Toledo, Boston, the first 5 years of my life, then Salt Lake for a year. And then our family made moved to California when I was in first grade. So I really think like just being in California had a huge influence because softball was a big game out there. It was had such a strong presence. But I like 100% attribute like my success in softball to the street that I grew up on. I grew up on a
Mm.
street, a cul-de-sac, and it was a street of all boys. And we like would the sun would rise, we'd go out in the street and we would just play sports all day. Like, and our parents didn't know where we were. We could be miles away from the house, like nobody knew. We'd be out in the street playing football and soccer and tackle. Whenever it rained, it would be mud football. We'd play baseball. And with baseball, it was we had a bat, a tennis ball. We would put like dishcloths down as the bases. And I realized it later when I was coaching that I think I learned to hit in my driveway because we would play in my driveway and then the house straight across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson's house. That was like our like meter of if you hit their garage, it was a single. If you hit the bottom part of their roof, it was a double. If you hit the top part of their roof, it was a triple. And obviously, if you hit it over their home, it was a home run. But it just forced like straight hitting, staying up the
Yeah.
middle. Like we couldn't pull it, we couldn't like slice it. You had to hit it straight up the middle at the house. So I really like thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, for letting us hitting tennis balls at your house. That's where it kind of started. So
That's so
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Honestly, this is why I love you because literally that exact same story I can tell you happened in my neighborhood. Like it was
Yeah.
me, and then there were some girls on our street, but they weren't athletic. They didn't want to play. And it was me and all these boys. And I think from like a competitive standpoint, boys are just ruthless, like
Oh
in a
yeah.
in a way to where I gained so much like just mental toughness from trying to compete
Yes.
against these boys because they don't want to let a girl beat them.
They don't, and they're crazy. I can tell you this. I hosted my 8-year-old daughter's birthday party 2 weeks ago, and my God, the boys were like whole they wanted to tackle and fight and play and rough and like that's how I had to keep up with them growing up. That's what you had to do if you wanted to keep up. And I constantly felt like I had to show them like, well, I can hit it over the fence or I can hit it over the house or I can score a touchdown or a goal or whatever it was. So we would always, yeah, I had to keep up.
Yeah. And are you, now that Janie's 8, is it kind of like a goal of yours to keep her on like competitive, teams like that? Or do you just want her to just
No,
enjoy it?
I'm so like, I truly believe like, I'm not going to make her a softball player. If she wants to play softball, that's it. I'm like just letting her try all kinds of things. So like she's playing softball right now. Yes. She played soccer all fall. Um, I'm hopefully Saturday, I'm gonna try and take her to like a free tennis clinic in town. She did ice skating, all like I literally wanted to try everything and see what clicks because like I knew for me like sports clicked right away. Like that was it. I loved it. And I think like I truly believe that if you want to be successful in anything, like you're gonna find most success in what you're passionate at. And that's gonna fuel you to keep going. So if I see that like fuel and that passion in her in like sport, then yeah, I'll push her and drive her a little more. But I'm just kind of like waiting to see it. I'm setting it up where she can play and we'll see what she comes to love and like, but I'm
Yeah.
certainly not pushing it. You're not gonna see me as one of these crazy parents that's on a scholarship mode with her at 8 years old.
No, I'm so
It's
glad you
just,
said that.
yes, it's not worth it because you don't even know, you know? Um,
No.
it's funny. One time I was working and we were running a panel of Olympian athletes. This was for a previous job I had, and we had an Olympic volleyball player on, and one of the parents asked, I have a 12-year-old daughter. I want to know, like, what were you doing at 12 years old? Like, that made you such a successful volleyball player. And she said, at 12 years old, I was playing kick the can in the street with the boys. Like I was just out, like I was roaming the neighborhood, kind of like we just talked about. And I love that. I thought that was such a great answer because if it's in you, it'll come about. Like it's not going to come about if you push it at 8, 9, 10 years old. And this year-round stuff, like I do think you need to have balance. Like you gotta let them be kids. So I really, I just want her to be a kid and
Hmm.
have fun.
Yeah, I love that. And then her competitive fire will come out. So
Exactly.
when you were getting older, were you playing multiple sports or
Yeah.
did you focus on softball at a certain age? What sports were you playing?
I played soccer and softball and swimming all the way till swam through 8th grade, and then in high school it was just soccer and softball all the way till the day I got to Notre Dame for college. So soccer I loved because I got my energy out. I could run around, I could crash into people, I could, it was a little more aggressive, whereas the softball, I didn't I still loved that, but it just had a different vibe. So it was really important for me to do that. But I was on a really competitive travel ball team. And I remember, our coach wanting like commitment. He didn't want us to miss for other sports. And like, God bless my dad. He would like sneak me off to go play. Like we would play an 8 a.m. softball game and Orange, and then we'd go slip off to Irvine and I'd play a noon soccer game and then back for the 3 p.m. softball game. And like my coach had no clue, but my dad, like, he'd be like, come on, you're doing it. Let's go. So
Dang.
that was really important. So that, yeah, again, like playing multiple sports, it was really good for me to have that balance. And like softball was just so competitive and so serious in Southern California at that point that I was like, I felt the heaviness of it. So it
Hmm.
was really important to me to have soccer as well.
Yeah. Now, from like a footwork standpoint, you probably had this just element in softball that was just so good with your footwork and all that stuff because of soccer. Like, do you attest some of those skills in softball to your soccer skills?
I think that like having just playing a different sport and like using different muscles and like doing different things, like I don't know that it translated, but it gave me athleticism as a
Hmm.
whole. So I wasn't, like funneled into one area. Like I was able to move left and right. Like I wasn't super fast at all. But I like trained myself by the time I was in college to get like quick on the base paths. I was never a base stealer, but I learned to steal bases
Hmm.
by the time I was in college. But I think that that was just due to athleticism, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly if footwork, like translated over exactly, but
Yeah, I preach the athleticism part. And like you said, I think when you play multiple sports, you're using different muscles. You're
yeah,
being tested in different areas. You have different types of coaching, game
yeah,
style. Like, how
yeah,
important is that for athletes to think about, especially early on? Like,
yeah,
um, to be just an athlete. Like my dad raised me the same way. I was playing
yeah,
everything. And at the end of the day, yeah, I was a better softball player, I think, because of all these different sports I was playing.
right. Yeah, I mean, and even they can take the skill out of it. Like just put yourself in the competitive situations. And I can think of like, oh my gosh, being in the championship soccer game and it was a tie game and you were competing and then it went to shootout and like the pressure of that, like having to walk up and make the PK and the pressure all being on you. And that provided just a different kind of pressure that was the same, but it just wasn't always the same thing over and over. It wasn't always being in the box in the pressure situation. It was a completely different environment and you just learn to kind of thrive. So I think
Hmm.
same pressure, different environments kind of makes you a little bit more whole
Yeah.
as a competitor.
Were you the player that loved winning or hated losing more?
I loved winning. I did. I loved like achieving and winning. That was it. Like the thing, like I knew I loved it, but I loved like achieving. That was my thing. And I think that's probably why I landed at a place like Notre Dame, because it's like the achievement piece of it.
On both
Uh,
ends, academically and athletically.
yeah.
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 Where did that come from? That achievement, just wanting it so bad?
I don't know. It was always wired in me. I just remember like, again, like loving sport. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I loved watching sports. I loved playing sports. I loved playing on the street, like all that. That was just in me. I was just born with it. And then like the Notre Dame piece came because I was, it ran in the family. My great uncle played football for Newt Rockne. He and his family retired in Santa Barbara. So in California, we would go up to these family reunions, in Santa Barbara, and they'd play the fight song. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it. Like, I love it. I want to be a part of it. And then when I
Hmm.
was in eighth grade, Rudy came out, and that was life changing. My mom took me to the premiere of Rudy, and that
Wow.
was it. Mind blown, decision done. Like I had to find a way to get to Notre Dame. So
That's amazing. Okay, let's
that was
dive into that process. And I know this feels probably like a million years ago because now you have this whole new life and things are
yeah,
crazy with kids, but like when
yeah,
you knew you wanted to go there, like,
yes,
and I know you were competitive and but like what did it take truly, to be able to play at your dream school? Because
yeah,
a lot of people don't get to. I mean, you know my
yeah,
story. Like my goal was Notre Dame. It wasn't as deep as your goal was Notre Dame,
right,
but like because of that pursuit, I ended up finding the perfect school for me. So like,
yes.
how did you find that and like what does that take?
Well, I mean, like, I got lucky too. Like, because it's like this mastery, it's like this equation, like you love
Mhm.
them and you want them, but they have to love you and want you too. And like
Yeah,
sometimes I can even say this from like when I was coaching at Notre Dame, like sometimes there'd be a kid we love and really wanted, but we had like three people deep in that position. And that would have been the case with you. So it was like,
totally.
we love you and want you, but like you gotta go where, you can go and, thrive. So I think I like though for me like when I was in high school, remember I talked about playing both soccer and softball, but I remember it coming to the point where like okay, you got to pick one. Like you got to get on a really competitive of one team and then the other one can kind of take the back seat. And so like the opportunity was there in softball and that's kind of like where my parents drove me. Like I think my love maybe was in soccer a little more, but my parents saw it and they're like the opportunities in softball, you're getting on a good softball team. So I got on a really good competitive softball team. I was on the SoCal A's, and like at that point, softball hadn't grown like it was today. So it was like us, the Bat Busters, Gordon's Panthers, the Firecrackers, and like maybe insert one more team. And these tournaments we'd play every weekend, it would always be us four, like and
Hmm.
one of us would win the same tournament every weekend.
Yep.
So just being on a really competitive program team that like it took a lot of practice. I mean, I didn't have a lot of weekends growing up. I gave up a lot. I didn't go to like a lot of the school dances or the school activities. I didn't have as much balance probably than I should have, but because I was practicing and practicing and putting in the repetition and playing and yeah, it just looked like a big commitment, and it was hard at times, but it paid off. Like it was worth it because that repetition over and over, like, and that high level competitiveness made me a better player.
Hmm. And you love practice. Like love practice. I feel like if you're a college coach, you have to love practice because you know how,
Yes.
if you do it right, you're gonna see the
Yeah.
results. So take me through why is practice so important? Why should we spend more time practicing? Because right now there's travel teams that are playing all year
Yeah.
long, not emphasizing practice and wondering why
Mhm.
they're not getting better.
Yeah. I mean, like it starts with fundamentals and like that's what our practice is. Like when I was probably from eighth grade on, like it was because I stayed in the same program, like pretty much all through my high school experience. And our practices never really changed. And like they would be the same thing. So we'd always start and we'd stretch and get loose and whatever, but then we'd go into like an hour of just fundamentals, like our coach just rolling balls at us. Like, and the whole team would be in the line, like fielding ground balls, regardless if you played infield or outfield, fielding backhands, taking drop steps, like over and over and over again. And like hitting would be in a cage, like I would just be hitting over and over and over again, like the same, just repping it out. And I think just building that foundation of fundamentals, and then like, same thing with base running, like we would do drills like that over and over. We'd have 6-hour practices. And it was crazy. And like the parents would all rally behind it. Like bring coolers, and we'd break for lunch, and we'd have like, we spent all this time together. And like these kids that I grew up with, like we all today, if I'd see them, we all have this like bond. If I like saw someone that like I hadn't seen in years, like because we spent so much time on that field together, just practicing it out and repping it out and getting dirty and diving and getting yelled at and competing and winning, like we just have this bond that goes back deep. And I think that practice is something that you just can't get from games. Like the fundamental foundation of like good footwork, learning how to field a ball, learning how to throw a ball, what a drop step looks like, hitting a pitch over and over and over again. So
to the point where it's boring, right? Like
yeah,
it's, but you're developing those, like you said, fundamentals, but also just muscle memory. Like
yeah.
I remember when I was I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I was like super sick and we were playing a game, and I had a fever of I think 101. I was at a field and it was like 95 degrees outside. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't thinking about my mechanics. I was just seeing it and hitting
Yeah.
it. And I actually played like lights out because
Oh
I
yeah.
think just my body was just like, okay, just do what you've taught it to do,
Yeah.
like trust it. And,
Yeah.
we'll talk about this a little later when we talk about hitting, but like our minds are what's stopping us from being great, I think, in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah. I mean, like the term is you give power to your thoughts. And
Mhm,
that works in really good and bad ways, because like, like in that situation, like where you're sick, because your mind, your thought is like, oh my God, I feel sick, I feel sick, I feel sick. So you're not thinking about hit the ball, do this, like get your foot down, get back, blah, blah, blah. You just let it happen naturally.
mhm,
Same thing, like if you're a player and you have an injury and you're battling it, if it's like, oh my God, my finger's like cracked open, if you're thinking about that finger over and over and over again, that's gonna get in your way a little. But if you focus your thoughts somewhere else, like it will,
mhm,
so like you really have to like think about like, okay, what are my thoughts, and like what am I giving power to? And how does that help me or hinder me?
mhm. Yeah, but back to just the practice and the reps, it's like we have to be able to know what to do, like from a body awareness standpoint. Like that's what
Yes.
practice is. It's to trust yourself, it's to fail, but
Yeah.
also learn like, okay, how can I do that better? Like, and you don't really see that. So when it comes to hitting, let's just dive into hitting. Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Look at, she's pulling her hair back. Let's go. Um, you ran a very similar hitting practice every day. I was, standing on the
Yeah.
side just watching and admiring how you run it. And it's like the girls kind of knew what to expect every day. Like it's like you
Mm-hmm.
start with your T drill
Mm-hmm.
and you go through this circuit and there's different elements that you add. Like the drills change every once in a while, but like you're
Yeah.
not a big drill person. Like you're
Yeah.
not here's a list of 35, 50 drills.
Yeah.
You only really talk about 2 or 3. Like,
Yeah.
give me your reasoning behind that, because I think, I get stuck sometimes saying, oh my gosh, like, what's this new drill that's going to help this hitter do this? But
Yeah.
like, you take a different approach, and I just want you to talk about it because I love it.
Yeah. Like I was never really gimmicky. So like you didn't see me. I early on, sure it was like when I was first learning hitting and figuring it out, like I tried all kinds of gimmicks, right? There's a few that like I do believe in, I stick with, like in terms of like if it's a hitting product that I like or whatever. But I kind of just was like, well, you got to figure out how to do it like the real way, like without what it's going to look and feel like in real life. So I think that it was just also not wanting to ever throw surprises at them where it was like it threw them off, like I wanted them to know what was coming and learn how to do it and be able to do that over and over and over again, so that that could just happen naturally when, the game came.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm thinking about the rise ball machine right now
yeah, the rice ball machine's a good one. That's
that
they
you threw at them in the fall, and they couldn't touch it like for
did
months.
it. Yeah, they did
Yeah.
it. And then
Yeah.
by the spring they started touching, but because we did it over and over and over again. Like you can't just do it once and then revisit it a month later.
Mhm.
Like, and that was one thing that we did was, I love that, we did machine Fridays. So like a lot of those Fridays, it was just like, we just did all kinds of machines and threw stuff at them, and then they loved it, threw on some good music, and we threw all kinds of crazy pitches at them with all different kinds of, rise ball machines and curve ball machines and drop ball machines and the small ball machine. And then, yeah, that just like, that the more they did it, the better they got at it. So I think like no surprises in hitting is a good approach, because like, well, yeah, you're gonna be surprised, like, right, like when someone throws like a nasty change or, backdoor curve at you or whatever it is. But you gotta learn how to hit it first. So like, and a great example with that would be change ups. Like, early on, it would be like, we'd always do drills where we would try and surprise them with a change. And then like, one day it hit me, I was like, why don't we let them know it's coming every time and let them learn how to hit it? Okay, so like now we're gonna do a drill where I'm gonna throw 30 change ups at you, and that change up's coming. So now you're working on your body and your form and how you like carry your weight and hold back and whatever it is, and you learn how to hit that off speed pitch. So that like when it does come at you, then your body knows how to react.
Mhm.
But when we just would try and surprise them with it, like it was always then the body didn't know how to react. You would just go into like, panic mode and throw the bat out there and whatever.
Right.
So
So if you're a hitting
yeah,
coach and you have a team or whatever that are struggling with changeups, you advise first things first, throw them changeups all the time, let them know it's coming, and have them figure
yeah.
out how to hit it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you tell them, hey, we're gonna do a drill. And like I would say we would even be doing like reps sets of 5. I'd be like, okay, the first 5 are gonna be all off speed. And I'd throw them 5 off speed. They knew exactly, and they would plan on how to hit it. Okay, the next 5 are gonna be all fast. Then we throw 5 fast right past them. And then the next 5 we're gonna mix them. So then they had to put it together. But like
Mhm.
just don't surprise them with it. Let them know it's coming, and let them learn how to react to it.
Yeah. And I think over time, I'm thinking of myself as a hitter here. You're going to also notice, as they're throwing the pitch, what does the release look like? It's like you're learning more than just the fact that a changeup's coming. No, you're seeing like,
Mhm.
what is the pitcher doing to throw that changeup? How can you recognize it early? And I
Yeah,
think just over time, you kind of just learn that. And I
yeah,
love that you're advising to just, hey, let's just hit a bunch of them, react.
yeah. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Now, if you're a player, so another thing that I admired about you is that you weren't like always chirping at your hitters while they're in the cages. You
Oh
really
yeah.
didn't say much at all. And I think a lot of hitting coaches, even myself sometimes, like we always, want to fix it within a rep,
Yep.
but
Yep.
you kind of just let them learn, let them figure it out. And a lot of times the hitters were approaching you
Yeah.
with Lizzy, I can't get this. How can I
Yes.
get this?
Yeah.
But that patience that you had, did you always have that? Or what did you learn to know that that's an important element as a hitting coach?
Well, like I learned when I learned about how I process information, like me as a person, I'm a slow processor. Okay. So like
Same.
you're gonna tell me something or ask me a question. If you ask me a question, like if a hitter comes in and says, oh, what's going on with my swing? I might not have an answer for you right away. I need to like think about it. I need to look at you. I need to probably get my phone out and film you. Let's take a look, let's break it down, and then I'm gonna process it, and then I'm gonna have a really great answer for you. Some people are not like that. Some people are really fast and they can just tell you right away, or they'll always have an answer for you right away. But when I learned about myself that like, yeah, like I kind of process a lot slower. So I stopped like giving them false information, like giving them that quick answer that I thought I had to give them. I was like, so they came to me and said, all right, what's going on? I'm feeling this or whatever. I said, okay, well, let's take a look. Let's hit some, let's film it. Let's break it down. I believe in just them watching themselves so much makes a huge impact. So in the power in the iPhone, like, slow-mo video mode can just tell you so much about it. So I think that when I learned like that, how I process information, then it just gave me like the freedom and the space to kind of like let go, let them go, and like really just give them autonomy over their swings and let them in there and figuring it out. And like if I like micromanage their swing, there, man, there's a lot of hitters I know I screwed up over the years because I micromanaged them. Like I was like, do this and do this and tweak this and do that. And it was like, just let it go, right? Just let them go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it takes time to learn that, and I love that you
Yeah,
were vulnerable in sharing that.
yeah.
Now, do you think that do you let hitters kind of feel it out too? Like, are there times where you're just like, what do you feel? You know, like what questions are you asking these hitters if they just feel lost?
Yeah. If they're not feeling great, it's like sometimes it's like, okay, well, tell me what you're feeling. What do you know, what's going on? Tell me what you're feeling. And if they can't really connect with that, it's like, okay, well, is it a timing issue? Okay, so let's talk about your timing. Like, do you think that maybe it's not, because I think a lot of times what we do is we just go start changing physical stuff. Like, all right, let's change your hands and move your foot and change your
Yeah.
stride and let's change everything up. But it really might just be a timing issue. And the one thing that really goes along with timing a lot is tempo. So like I really put timing and tempo a lot together where, like let's slow it down. Let's make it really smooth, really controlled, because if you look like hitters that are like moving too fast, their tempo is moving too fast, like they're loading fast or stepping fast, whatever. But like say you slow all that down, well then you have to adjust your timing too. So if we're gonna like slow our movements down and try and be a little slower and smoother, I might have to start like all my movements a little bit earlier to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, like we always worked to get like to that like ready position, whatever that is, like the toe touch, ready, stretch, like whatever you want to call it, like with optimal efficiency. So like timing and tempo, a lot of times timing and tempo went into that a lot more than mechanics because it was like just about getting there. And if you can get there at the right time with the right tempo, then it would allow your bat to find the zone and find the ball.
Yeah. So right now, prime example, hitters are struggling with timing. And I always say it's because, this past winter, how often did you see a live pitcher? And a
Yeah.
lot of them are like, oh, I guess not there very much because we didn't play. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why everybody's struggling with timing.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give on, hey, how can you keep up with your timing? Like, is it just seeing a live pitcher more? Is it more machine work? Like, how would you go about a hitter that's struggling with timing?
Yeah, I think that I think just seeing, if you don't have a live picture to see, right, then you got to find a way to visualize that, and visualization can really like play into that. So if you are using machines, like I think that that's, um, like not just going ball, ball in the machine over and over, like slow it down. So even like you could kind of make a machine more real life, realistic. So like instead of like, hitting like just 10, 15, 20 real fast, like why don't you hit one, step out, like you're in an at bat, then step back in and make sure that you're like getting yourself set and ready every single time. But like for timing too, like this is like simple, like my rule of thumb was always like try and have like your foot down and your hands ready, like ready in that, again, that like kind of stretch position. Right when the ball's releasing. So like when that ball's coming out of the hole or when that pitcher is coming out of the pitcher's ball's coming out of the pitcher's hands, like to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, like if someone was struggling and we went back to the video, I could see like, okay, your stride foot's not even get down until like the ball is 3/4 of the way into the zone and or out of the pitcher's hand. So like let's shoot to be a lot earlier. So I mean that would be really early, right? Like just shooting to be like stride foot down and like getting into that position right about at the pitcher's release. But especially when you were struggling, you'd rather be early than be late.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helped you out a little.
Yeah. Can you,
So
for just those listening, obviously not everybody can see you, but if you go to YouTube, you can
yeah.
watch it. What is that stretch position? Can you describe that position that you want to be in before you fire?
Yeah. I mean, it's like not when you are it's not just like when you're in your stance, it's like when you get in your stance and the pitcher's winding up and then you're winding up. And so it's like kind of when you're at your optimal, like right here, right? Like so when
Yep.
I'm like right before my bat starts to go through the zone.
Hmm.
So that's what I call, a stretch or a load or a
Yeah.
gather. Like we always were trying to find like what's the right word for this, right?
What's gonna
Yeah,
resonate?
I think gather might be kind of like one of the best ones, but like when you're in that optimal, I called it like ready position, like
Hmm.
ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, even a defensive, like ready position, it's very similar. Like you're in the
Yeah,
center of your body, you're in an athletic place. Like if you're
yeah,
going to move from one direction or the other, you are ready. Like your core is
yeah,
involved. Like
yeah,
it's kind of, it's hard to explain actually.
yeah. I mean, and if you watch any great hitter, like put on the softball, baseball, whatever hitter it is, like it's gonna be when they get in the box and the pitcher starts their windup, and then you're starting to like get ready to pull back and hit it.
Hmm.
A great analogy, like baseball or softball to hockey, like the ready position would be like when a hockey player is in his like slap shot, like he's pulled back, but he hasn't move
Released.
forward with that
Yeah.
stick, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Or she hasn't, right?
Yeah,
Guess the
correct.
hockey players out there too. When the hockey player, when they're in that pullback slap shot before they come through, that's what I would consider like ready.
Hmm. It's funny you said she because we grew up kind of watching males on TV more than
Yes.
females. So
Yeah,
I always think of baseball terms or baseball hitters like,
yeah,
but now we get to have softball players, you know, be able to be examples for us, which is so cool.
yeah.
But yeah, another thing that I like the stretch because, you know, I do this drill called like a rubber band drill where you're
Yes.
stretching between your hands and your front knee. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you can create a good stretch between those
Yep,
two, and then
yep,
when you decide to fire, those almost like come together and snap just like a rubber band would.
yeah.
That I like stretch. I like that. I think I'm gonna start
Yeah,
using
we
that
would
with
do
my
that a lot.
hitters.
We would put like a band on like their foot and their hands. And if you got into that ready position and your band had not tightened, then you weren't making an efficient move. So you want like that band to tighten, like to pull apart and tighten rather than stay like loose, you know? And you do see that a lot. Some hitters, they'll all just move together,
Hmm.
right? Instead of like stretching your body apart.
So good. I love this so
Yeah.
much. You know how much I love
Mhm.
this. So some coaches are struggling with like how to put together practices depending on the season that they're in.
Yeah.
And I know like your fall practices were different than your spring practices and then your in-season practices. So can you just give like a brief oversight on, you know, what are you trying to do in the fall with your hitters in college?
Mhm.
What were you doing in the spring? And then come season, like what was going on?
Yeah. The fall was like repetition, get back into it. Like they had just taken the summer off for the most part and like, and that's really important in college, just to take that summer and like, just get your body back, get your health back, like reload.
Breathe.
Then when they come back in the fall, like it's gonna be heavy rep, lots of practice. We're also playing games. Like fall is probably the most intense time in terms of volume of everything because in college softball, like fall is when you're doing everything. Like you're playing games, you're going to practice, your camps and clinics, you got like it's all going on, right? So just really heavy volume in the fall and just like repping it out, let's get it back. And then when fall practice stops and it's into hitting like individual just skill instruction time, that's gonna be all right, now let's start to break it down. And let's like, okay, you've repped it out, we've got you back in a good habit of swinging, and like when we feel comfortable with that, let's kind of, is there something we can look at to like, let's make an adjustment and improve, or like, where can we break it down and kind of like deep dive your swing a little bit more? And then, you know, and then go home, take break, keep yourself fresh and going. But then when they come back for spring season, I would say the deeper we got into spring season, like volume is really important in terms of like you can't keep up. Now at this point, like what we've learned is like recovery is the power of recovery, right? So where you might be getting like 150 swings in a fall practice, like we might be getting 50 swings in a spring practice, like when we're in game mode. Because to be fresh is to be like you're gonna just get more out of that rather than going with that heavy volume. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, you know, a lot of hitters think that if they're in a slump, they need to just hit the snot out of the ball and just train and train and train and train their way out of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like even just to play one game in college, like I hated double headers because I
Yeah.
knew I needed like a whole day to recover.
Yes.
But it's exhausting. You are literally putting your body through so much to just
Yes.
play in a game now that,
Yep.
you know, when you go to train, your body's fatigued. You're still
Mhm.
lifting a little bit. Like there's just all these other elements that I'm glad you're like, no, let's do some quality swings and just a few
Yes.
of them. Like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't think
Just keep
enough
it
players
fresh.
do that.
I do, and I think that, I think that like everybody, really important thing I learned too was like everybody is, when you're in season and you're all playing together at the same time, like everybody's putting in the same amount and you're getting better at the same rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you're in practice, girl from school across the way, or your rival school, whatever, they're in practice too. We're all getting swings, we're all getting better at the same rate. Where improvement happens is in those off seasons and that summer. Like that's where you see the improvement happen, because when everybody's not doing it at the same time, what are you doing? Like, right,
Yeah.
look, what are you doing to like kind of be in that race and get ahead, right? Like to rep it out, because it's all about repetition, like just
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. Like we know that, like what the 10,000 hour rule, like when you hit that 10,000 hour of repetition of whatever it is your craft, like you become a master, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought like improvement really came in the off season and in the summers, more
Yeah.
so than during the year. Like during the year, we're all doing it, we're all keeping it going at the same rate. And I have
So
specific players I could think of that I would come back from summer and you'd be like, wow, she worked. I could tell she was working all summer long.
yeah, is that something you address in your final meetings before summer? Like, hey, this is
Oh
how you're
yeah.
gonna.
Yeah, we
This is what we
address it
need.
all the time, and it's like whether they execute it or not, like it, right? But like, and you'd even see it like a little bit in summer too, like or during season two, like Mondays would be the off day, right? Monday's your off day.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids that would go in and hit on Monday as well, like sometimes had a leg up because maybe they were putting it in, but like you got to know your body too, and it's really like do a little, a lot, instead of
Mm.
like having one day of doing one big session, like just do a little, a lot and chip away.
I'm glad you mentioned that because
Yeah.
everybody thinks you're only going to get better if you spend 2 hours on it a day. And it's like, no, like if you
You
spend a
could
quality
spend
15 minutes every
it,
day.
it's all it takes 15 minutes, And like that's what like when I would be there before practice or games every day, I'd be like, hey, like you just gotta be here, like we can go jump in the cage 10-15 minutes before BP or before warm-up starts, and that would create improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take a lot.
It's over time. It adds so many
Yeah,
reps.
yeah,
Yes, so good. Can we talk a little bit of how you address certain hitters? Because you have some hitters that need all the information.
yeah,
And I think you and I are similar. We don't want a ton. We want
yeah,
just what we need, we just want
yep,
minimum. We want to be able to just react and hit.
yeah.
So how do you address those different types of hitters as their coach?
You gotta get to know them and like what moves them, what motivates them, and like, for me, like, okay, so I'm a big believer in we did a lot of like disc profiling, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like that's really
Digging it.
like your behavior
Yeah.
based profile, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
if you look at like me, my disc profile is like I'm a really high C and S. Like I'm someone, like a lot of information could really bog me down when I learned that about myself. And so like less was more for me. Someone who's like a high D, it's just being really direct with them. Someone who's like really, a high I person, like you want to really connect with them like emotionally, right? So some hitters are emotional hitters. So that really like helped me coach up my players a lot, because when I knew how to like manage their behaviors, I knew how to address them with certain things. So like, for some hitters, I knew I could go to and be like, you're not doing this, you need to get it done, let's go. Whereas some hitters, I would have to go and be like, hey, how was your day? What's going on? How's your roommate? Like, tell me about class. Okay, let's talk about hitting, and a lot of times with like those type people, you'd understand that like something else may have happened that was like getting in their way and it was in their head, and then we could like address that, and it'd be like, okay, well, the fight with the roommate got in the way, and then she was thinking about that, and then that ruined her whole practice, and that's why she looked bad today. It wasn't so much
Mm-hmm.
really about hitting, but just like understanding people. Like these girls are human beings, like, right, like they all, and everybody's different, and how you were coached doesn't necessarily mean that's how they have to be coached. I deal with that with my daughter every day. Like she's so not me, right? But I like I'm constantly trying to find ways, okay, how do I connect with her? That's not the way that I would want to be connected with. But everyone's different. And I think that's one thing, like like one size fits all doesn't work in 2024. Like that doesn't exist anymore. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing we learned. Like it's now like everything's specialized. And there's a criticism on that, but there's also could be like a huge benefit to that as well, you know?
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. So are you taking Janie outside? You have a tee and balls and you just let her hit, or you
Um,
practice with her a little bit?
we practice. I just like throw tennis balls. Totally guilty of dropping like $100 at Dick's Sporting Goods the other day on hitting stuff. I bought like those little total control balls, you know, like the little ones. I was like, these will be good for her. The soft ones, not the heavy ones, which um I was just had to laugh at myself. I like took pictures and was like texting them to players because I was like, I can't believe I'm
Here we
turning into
are.
this person.
Here we
Um,
are.
yeah, but
That's funny.
she's also been showing me lately, Mom, I want to go out and hit. I want to do that. So I was like, okay. And so then yeah. And I
Yeah.
knew my husband would get mad at me for it because, this is what he does too. So
Of course. Yes. We haven't even
yeah,
talked about Chuck, but
yeah,
um yeah, and now he's overseeing Navy. Like, how cool is that you get to see your other half just live out his dream, be a head coach?
it's pretty cool. It's really fun. It's different than what I expected, but it's really in a great way. It's really fun. And just to see him like kind of evolve from like so many years of knowing him as like an assistant coach, I always know him as my husband, but now to see him as a head coach, it's a different role, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
well,
overseeing a staff, and
yeah,
the staff is going to do it's probably a totally different dynamic. And I'm sure he
yeah,
asks you questions a lot of what he should do in certain situations.
kind of. We don't really like break it
No?
down too much. We talk, right? We talk and we chat, but like I think it's more important for us to be like husband and wife than like coach to coach,
Yeah, he doesn't want
health
to
of
bring
our
a lot of work
relationship.
home. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's good. And you just get to be a fan.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
it's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. So last question. Actually, no, I'll add that to my rapid fire, actually. Is there
Okay.
anything else about hitting or even just the IQ of hitting that you wanted to talk about that you worked on with your players? Like, because I think, game IQ comes from experience.
Yeah,
And, it's funny, like if I were to go lace up right now, I think physically I'm not as strong as I was, but I think I still get it done just due to the
yeah,
fact that we're constantly learning and evolving,
yeah,
that mental approach. But like
yeah,
from a game IQ standpoint, like are there like certain tips or keys that,
yeah,
you feel like younger coaches or
yeah.
even players need to hear?
I would for me, it was like really start from the start of the swing. Like, and that's really where I like focused most of my effort with our hitters was like, if we worked on like A, B, and C first, like D, E, and F would take care of themselves. So like everything I did with our hitters was all about how do we get them to set themselves up? Going back to that, like that ready position, get to that ready position with optimal efficiency and great timing so that when they go to swing the bat, it just takes care of itself. That I found huge success in that for me because as like a hitting coach, because like you wouldn't see me doing a lot of drills like working on the extension or the finish or like the contact. Like I found it more important to work on the beginning stuff first, and then it would just all take care of itself. So
Mhm.
like physically, I would really like that's what I recommend is like it's a domino effect. Work on that first part and then the rest of it like should just fall into place. If you're like doing it right with optimal efficiency and if there's any of your listeners that want to talk hitting with me, I'm an open book. I'll share it anytime.
I love it.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
with
that's the thing. It's like, it's like share the information. Like it's no secret, right? Like just the coaches, so many great coaches out there taught me and I learned from them. And, I remember like early on, like Coach Candrea like said, hey, what's mine is yours. And he would always like share information when I'd go hear him speak at different camps or clinics and get out there and just like learn, get on. Even as a college coach, 15, 17 years in, I'd be getting on YouTube and like Googling stuff and like learning, just listening to different hitting tips, whether it was on like MLB Network or just conventions or clinics. I think and you got to find what works best for you.
Mhm.
There's not a one size fits all approach. And there's not one way to hit a ball. So
No, there really
yeah,
isn't. There really isn't. And like one thing I also admired about you is that like, you weren't trying to make everybody have the same swing either.
yeah,
Like you knew each hitter had they were different sizes, they were swinging different
yeah,
bats. And
yeah,
like to manage all of that,
yeah,
it takes a lot, like you said, like getting to know the person. But like from that stretch position, yes, like
yeah,
that's going to look pretty similar. Contact, probably going to
yes.
look pretty similar, but everything before and after.
And
You
that's
didn't,
like, yeah, that's style, the difference between style and mechanics, and like, let them have their style. Like, you could like have your hands straight up in the air, right? But like when you get to that position, it's gonna look the same, right? That's
Mhm.
gonna be mechanics. Style, you might start open, you might start closed, you might be hands high, you might be hands low. You might be like you, be out super wide and in your legs and like, really, you might just be standing straight up, like kind of really more compact. Like, everybody's style is different. Let a hitter have their own style and focus on the mechanics. And the mechanics are, that point when you get to that ready position and just making sure everything's in line and in place and and I would also say, like, when things go wrong, like kind of always look a step before. Like, don't look at what's going wrong, be like, okay, well, what's happening before that? And then what's happening before that, and what's be happening before that to like cause you to maybe um you know, like if you're popping up, like, okay, well, don't just work on the pop up, like what's happening before the pop up, like, are you, okay, you're dropping your hands, well, why are you dropping your hands? Probably because you're opening your hips. Why are you opening your hips? Maybe because you're closed off, like, so just keep backtracking to see
Mhm.
where like the root of the problem is.
This is so good. Do I want this to go for another 4 hours? Yes, but I know we have lives to go get to. You said you could answer any questions people might have. I think people are going to take you up on that. So where should we have them head to reach out to you?
They're gonna reach out to maybe you, and then you can forward them my
That
way.
works. That works. Okay. So we can do
Yes,
that. I'll put my email in the show notes and people can reach out and then I'll forward them to you.
okay, that works.
That's perfect.
I
Okay.
love I love talking, and especially because I'm not coaching right now. So like talking hitting to me and helping people would be a treat. I would love to do it.
Well, this has been a treat for me, and I know people listening, this has also been a treat. This is one of those where there were so many things hit on that I think people are going to have to listen to more than once. I think I'm going to go back and learn something new the second time I listen.
Sounds good.
But this has been a pure joy. I told you that some rapid fire questions were coming,
Yes.
so hopefully you're okay with this.
I'm a slow processor, but I will try.
Okay, you did mention that, so I will
Yes,
take
rapid
all the
fire is
time.
yeah.
Take all
Rapid
the
fire is
time you
my
need.
personal nightmare as a slow processor.
You're not the first person that I've interviewed to tell me this, so I'll give you the list of people who had said the same thing.
Yeah.
Perfect. So a hitter that you've always admired. Can you drop a name?
Um, I go back to like Stacy Newman was a great hitter that I would always go back to her video. And it stinks because we didn't have high def video when she played. So I would always be showing my hitters grainy video of her. I'm gonna
That's
go to
a
Newman. Yeah.
great answer. Second one. What's well, I don't want it to be deep, but Deanna has been, this role model in your life for so long.
Mhm.
Mine as well. But is there any sort of lesson from her that you wish that, a coach that's kind of new to the game, needs to learn from that Deanna maybe has taught you?
Oh my God, she taught me so much. She just taught me to like, you know, get gritty and compete and know the difference between hard and a challenge and um, just fight. I think just continue to lead. And she's taught me how to be like a really compassionate, loving mom. More than anything, I think just watching her be a parent actually has had more of an impact than the softball. I look up to that.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention this. I think working for that program for a minute, basically, where I was there,
Yeah.
um, family was like something that like, everybody preaches like, oh yeah, we're a family, we're a family. But like
Yeah.
Deanna actually lives by
Yes.
that. Like from a team culture standpoint, like I've never seen a
Yes.
program closer. Like
Yes.
is how does she do it? Like other than just taking care of the people. right?
Yeah,
I
that's
think it's
it.
awesome.
That is it. You just value people more than softball. Like, and when you truly value and love your people, then you get the most out of them.
Hmm. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you're not into drills, but you have like one or two signatures. Can you share what those one or two signature drills are?
I liked, I liked grading contact. Okay, so that would just be like a good one where like you look at your contacts and you grade it, like, is it a 1, a 2, or a 3? And that kind of helped us as coaches just evaluate hitters. A 3 would be like a ball you smoked, a 2 is just like an average hit, and a 1 is like a, a little dinker.
Hmm.
I liked that. I liked, um, this is a really like grueling drill, but just a drill we called like point game, where you just be hitting balls in the cage, and if it was a quality at bat, you'd get +2. If it was a non-quality at bat, you get -2.
Mm.
And so your number would be just going up or down, right? And sometimes with hitters, it might be like 2, 4, 6, 4, 2, 0, -2, -4, and you see them, like, you could literally see hitters going into that downward spiral, and they had to find a way to work themselves out. One of the toughest drills, one of the most telling drills, is that, and that's more, it's not even, doesn't have anything to do with mechanics. It just has to do with like approach and yes,
Your head. Hmm.
yeah,
Facts. Okay. This leads me to my next question. A hitter's in a slump, like a
yeah,
massive slump, like a 3, 4 game slump. It's like nothing's clicking.
oh yeah.
What's the first thing you do with that hitter?
They gotta get out of their head. So it's gonna be like nothing to do with softball. You can like either take time off, or you gotta put music on, or you gotta go out and completely change it up, and like you gotta find a way to get the focus off like the slump. Like to
Mhm.
get the slump out of your head. And so whatever it is, like completely change it up, and take someone along with you, I think, as well. Like when you're in it on your own, like get some friends to go out, go in the cages, put some music on, blast it, go out, whatever, and just get out of your head.
Mhm. So good. Okay, last
And for
question.
and for
Go ahead.
coaches with big budgets, I always believed in new balls. Okay, so like when we were struggling, we brought out new balls because new balls fly, and then it makes them feel really good. But if you don't have a big budget for that, then that doesn't work.
Or get out the 11-inch balls. Those have some pop to them.
Yeah, baseballs. Hit some baseballs. That's a good one.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Just not off a machine because then you'll dent your bat. But yeah.
Yes.
Last question I have for you is I remember going to Notre Dame camps when I was growing up, and we had
Yes.
this stupid chuck it in the
Yes.
cage, and we'd
Yep.
hit. So chuck it is a dog toy for those listening and don't know.
Yep.
It's a really great hitting tool. I use it with my hitters now, but I hated that freaking thing.
Yep.
Where did the chuck it evolve for you? And I know you still let hitters use it. Like, why
Yeah.
is it important to use the chuck it? It's this $12 tool you can get on Amazon.
Yeah. It teaches proper bat path. So like when you properly, like you hold the little chuck it toy, with the tennis ball in there, and you set a target for them, and they have to hit this target, which is typically right up the middle. If they can learn to like release and get their tennis ball to release from the chuck it and hit that center target right up the middle, then you're just creating proper bat path and like good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, someone taught me that along the way. I think it was Don Slott when I went to go visit him in his pool house and learn hitting from Right View Pro like 15, 20 years ago.
That's amazing. It's funny because I went to a lot of camps, and I remember the first year I was thrown in that cage and I struggled so
Yeah,
hard. I was
yeah,
extending my front arm and it was like flying open. And then my dad bought a chuck it the next day, and we spent the entire year like just
yeah.
working on that drill and getting better at
Chuck
it.
it. Yeah,
And what's so crazy is like I attest a lot of things to that silly drill that you introduced
yep.
me to, but thank goodness
Hmm.
you did because
Yeah, good. I'm
it
glad.
does, it does work. It does work. Well,
Yes,
Lizzy, thank you so much for spending time with me today. This has been an
absolutely.
absolute blast. We should just have you back on and we should talk more hitting later.
We'll go
Um,
2.0 next year.
yeah, next year. Maybe. See it 2 years down the line. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But this has been so great. Thank you so much for your time. And I know this
Anytime.
is something that a lot of people are going to value, and I just appreciate you so much.
Awesome. I'm really happy to be a part of your community. You got a good thing going. So just keep it going.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks.